Welcome to the Truth Has No Sides podcast. These conversations will be had to expand the minds and the consciousness of you, the listener. If you like the content of the show, please like the video and subscribe to our channel to help this message be seen and heard by more people. Thank you for being here and enjoy the episode. Okay, today's guest, Sheri McCraw. Another guest that I've met through a friend of a friend. I very much enjoy how this podcast is opening up to new interviews, to new people, to new modalities, to new energies, to new whatever it is. Sheri, I'm not a big bio guy, so I like to just let the guest, let the world know who they are, where they're from, what they did, and we'll just open up the conversation and go off on as many tangents as we like.
All right. I'm not a big bio person either, so I'll just give you a quick, I'm in Mexico right now. I'm living in Mexico. I've been living in Mexico for the past 4 years, full time. I came to Guadalajara in 2020 and then moved to Mazatlan, Mexico, which is on the Pacific coast of Mexico, sort of northern Pacific coast, probably about 7 hours north of Puerto Vallarta. And when I first arrived here, I actually opened a bed and breakfast. And then I moved into a couple years later, opening my energy enhancement system. I'm originally from Toronto. I was in the corporate world before I came to Mexico. And I came during the pandemic, which was a good decision. I was glad to be here during that time. I think that's just a quick lowdown of who I am.
Okay. The first question that comes to mind, because the guy just before you a few days earlier had moved his family to Mexico as well. Is there something about Mexico? Is there an energy? Is there something going on down there? Is that just a coincidence that quite a few energy people are moving down there?
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence. I had never been to Mexico when I came in 2020. But I had a feeling, and yeah, people say, well, you must have planned to come down and all this. And I'm like, no, actually, I never had planned to ever really come to Mexico. There's been a lot of bad publicity for Mexico. And, but in August of 2020, I started feeling like, I think I'm going to Mexico. Like everything was Mexico, Mexico, Mexico. And I thought, So I thought, well, then I heard of a friend's daughter who was moving down to Mexico, and I thought that's who I'm going to go with. And I thought I'll just come for 4 months and see what I think. And just before the 4 months were up, I had decided that I was falling in love with the country and decided to stay longer. And right when I made that decision, Canada canceled all flights back into Canada. So I thought, well, I guess I'm definitely staying. So, the longer I've been here, the more I've fallen in love with it. And there definitely is a different energy here. I was just back in Toronto in August, September. And I thought to myself, you know what? I don't really ever see myself going back to live there full time. I've totally fallen under the spell of Mexico for sure. And I really think what I'm doing right now was the reason that I was absolutely had the feeling that I needed to come here.
Toronto to Mexico is a drastic shift. So
yeah.
I'd like to get into the EE systems because I've heard about them. We'll get into that in just a second, and your facility. How did your path start? Who were you as a kid? Was it something that happened as a child, teenage, older days? What got you down this path?
I think for most of us, we really feel it a lot when we're young, when we're children, and we're so open to so much of the magic that's in life. And then as we go along, we start listening to what the message of the rest of the world, and we start to forget that magic, and we start to live sort of that life where we think, okay, I need to get an education. Then I got married, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing that my husband is my ex-husband now is a wonderful man, raise children, buy a house, do all those things that you're kind of expected to do. And when you're in the midst of all that, you kind of lose that connection even more with maybe, who you really are. So it wasn't until I was in my late 40s and I began to feel like, okay, my kids are grown up and I'm starting to feel like something is pushing me down. I need to push that cork out. And, I started taking courses in mindfulness and meditation at the University of Toronto, which really opened up so much. I had an interest in Buddhism, so I picked up Buddhism for Dummies, which was a great introduction. But at the time, I was like, okay, all of this is like remembering, all this philosophy of Buddhism, very much like remembering. Oh, but meditation, I was like, yeah, I think I'll just skip that part. I'm not a meditator. I've got a bit of a type A personality. And that's kind of like saying you want to play pro hockey, but I'm not going to learn to skate. So I knew that meditation was good. I knew that people said meditate. And so I sat down on the floor and straight back with my legs crossed. And I thought, oh my God, what time is it? What time is it? This is awful. I don't like it. And you kind of go along that path for a little bit. And then one day I thought, you know what? I'm just going to lie down because my health was not good at the time. I had about 10 years of really bad health issues. And so I started to lie down and I started to listen to guided meditations. And 5 years later, I was still lying down and doing my meditations and loving them, craving them. And now, of course, meditation is absolutely, for over 10 years, part of my daily life. And it looks different all the time. Sometimes it's only a few minutes. Mostly it's not guided anymore. It's a silent meditation. And you begin to really crave it. And I laugh when I think about how I thought I wasn't a meditator. So I also began at that time to do a little bit of speaking. My friend was teaching at a college, so I'd go in and talk to the students about my journey with meditation and just making it more accessible for people to know that, meditation takes many different forms. It isn't, a prescribed thing, and it's not about clearing the mind. So, and then I began to realize that people seem to really want to hear what I had to say, which for me, I was like, wow, that's cool. So then I would say the next step in my journey was that I had a very serious operation on my neck. They removed a piece of my trachea. It took probably 3 or 4 years to learn to speak again. My voice is very different from what it was. And actually, they thought I would never speak again. But it's interesting. Those words never registered in my brain that you'll never speak again. I just was like, well, I'll just keep trying, and you just don't focus on what you don't want. You're just focusing on just what you do want, and you just keep going. And, but it was during that time, and I'd had other experiences through life of kind of out of the normal. But this time I'd just gotten home from the hospital. I'd been in intensive care. I had, staples from here to here and a trach in my neck and can't speak. Absolute worst pain you can imagine. And it's the time when you realize that every single emotion that you have is felt right here in your throat chakra. Even recognition of someone walking in the room would be like, absolute agony. So I had to just have nobody come to see me or talk to me because the pain was so bad. But as I was sitting there on the couch, just feeling like I was at the absolute worst time, is when this just a ray of sunshine came down on me, and I felt the absolute purest love that I've ever felt in my entire life. And it just felt, you know what, everything's going to be okay. And just to go from that deep, deep, deep pain and sadness and fear, a lot of fear, of course, to that absolute love and peace. And that was really something that's always stayed with me. Yeah, so then the journey was learning to speak again. It was also a time where I actually had to face my death every day for about 2 months, because that tube would clog and would cut off your breathing, and you had to open it and shove a solution down and a suction thing down to just clear it out, take a breath. And the first day I came home, it clogged, and there was no breath, no air, and I was very weak from surgery, so there was no like jumping up and running to the machine. So my husband at the time noticed that there was no sound from my airway, so he came running and ripped it open, so I can breathe. And that led to like 8 weeks of like every day looking at your death, and just it brings you to a whole other level of what life is all about when you face your death every day. So that really was life changing for me. So
What
after
years
that,
were that? What years were
that
that?
was in 2013. That happened in 2013.
Okay.
And then I began to take more of the mindfulness courses at the University of Toronto. And then I decided to, just out of someone out of the blue saying to me, you should take this yoga therapy training in Toronto. And it stuck with me. So I took an amazing 200-hour training that lasted about a year with incredible teachers who worked. Yoga has 8 arms. It's not just about the asana the movement that people mostly associate with yoga. We really concentrated more on the pranayama and the philosophy behind yoga. So that was, again, just brought me up that extra. And around that time, I actually separated from my husband, only because I didn't know what it was like to lead a life just as me. I had been with him for almost 40 years at the time. And I didn't know what it was like to be me on my own, because we're always different as part of a couple. Like no matter what, no matter how much freedom and love and all that kind of stuff you have in a relationship, you're never quite the same as when you can experience life on your own. So that also began a journey looking into metaphysics, and just literally binging on podcasts about spirituality and metaphysics and Buddhism, and like that whole field just really opened up to me. And so that would be in 2018. And then the pandemic comes along in 2020, and make the decision to come to Mexico. And the interesting thing about that was, again, it was because of what was going on, I spent a lot of time alone. So I was traveling through the country alone, and just you weren't even going to restaurants and meeting other humans. You were just kind of isolated so much, which actually turned out to be a good thing. I mean, it's a time when you're alone that you not forced, I don't want to say the word you're forced to, but it really comes up, the things that you need to heal within yourself. You're faced with them. You got you, and you're faced with you. And there's kind of nowhere to hide. So there were a lot of what I call dark nights of the soul, where you just go deep into whatever it is that is coming up for healing. And I found that as I went into it, like really went into it and allowed it to be painful, and allowed the tears to come and allow the feelings to come, as you go through that, and different people take different amounts of time. For me, it was usually 24 hours. I'd come out the other side and feel like amazing. like a freedom, a whole different feeling. And then I began to recognize these dark nights of the soul and be more like embracing of them. I mean, no one wants to go through pain and fear, but you start to learn that there's such a lesson in going through that, that when you come up the other side, the reward to your own self is just priceless. Like you don't even want to avoid it anymore. Like you go, okay, this is coming up and let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big shift for a lot of people on this path. Is the it seems like there's three levels: the avoidance,
Mm.
the working with it but still not
Right.
wanting to accept it, and then the full acceptance. And that full acceptance is incredibly difficult, because
Mm.
that second step of believing you've accepted it but still avoiding it subconsciously, or distracting yourself to no end so you don't have to feel that,
Yep.
is something I'm an expert at.
I think we probably all are.
Yeah, and it's every time I thought I was working on something, the universe would show me a deeper level, and it would just continuously peel back the onion. So yeah, that's a very difficult thing, and it's when you're going through that and you hear people tell you to just sit with it, or just to accept it, or to surrender. Um, you want to jump through the camera or jump through the YouTube video and just tell them to, yeah,
Yeah.
strangle him. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I sorry, I lost my train of thought there, what I was about to say. But yeah, you're absolutely right. When I know what I was going to say. I was going to say, and it's not something that it comes quickly, like not normally, I think to most people comes quickly, but the more you do it, it does get easier. And I'm not saying the more you do it, like it'll be easier in a week. I'm talking like the more you do it, it'll be easier in a year or 2 or 3. People are looking for that kind of quick fix, and it really isn't. Like people will say things like, oh, you're lucky that your life is like, you live in Mexico and what you're doing with your life. But I'm like, well, no, I'm not lucky. I made choices, and I work on this every day. Every day I'm meditating, I'm listening to things like, the type of thing that you're doing and many others as well. So every day I work on it. So it's not just like, oh, guess what? I went through it and now I feel great. Like it's no.
no, that was a big recognition for me as well. Thinking that this path was going to take everything away. It was going to take
Mm,
all the. I was going to remove everything I didn't like about myself, and then it was going to be flooded with peace and bliss. That
right.
is that's a very eye-opening experience, especially when you've got a great teacher, you've got great tools, great books, great knowledge, great information, great guidance, and it's still an incredibly tough struggle.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. 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 I know it's the surrendering can be one of the hardest parts, is surrendering that need to control and that need to for it to be what you think it is. And I know what you said earlier. You said just when you think you got it, then the universe throws something else at you. And I'm thinking that all the time. I'm thinking when something finally clicks and then I go, oh man, what else am I not getting? Like
mhm.
anything, you think you're at a certain point and you realize, no, I am maybe moving towards, but there's still so much that comes up. Absolutely, 100%.
And the everyone, it seems like everyone, including myself, thinks the spiritual path is better. It's just different. It's you know
It's different.
it's like building a business. When you have a business, something you really enjoy, really love, very passionate about, you can always find something to work on, always find something to make better. There's always going to be an issue, and spirituality is just the heads to the tails of that coin. There's always going to be something we feel we need to work on, to heal, to let go. That's that biggest expectation of thinking this path is going to remove the human side of being human.
Right.
So spirituality to me is also something at a point becomes another identity or another construct that also needs to be let go. And that's
Yeah.
a very difficult thing, because humans need the tool we've been given with the mind needs something. It needs a construct. It needs something to stand on. It doesn't like the void. So
Right.
spirituality fills in that void where someone left the corporate world or left the nonprofit world or left the life they didn't like. So they're trying to build a life they do like. So, and that's part of the process. That was the part of the process for me. No different
Yes.
than doing this podcast, and no different than writing the book. And it becomes something to give the ego something to do, but I think it becomes more natural in what you're doing, because you got to do something before you drop this body. You can't just sit around.
Right.
So
Right. And I do think, that really speaks to remembering that we're humans, and remembering that, to give ourselves a bit of a break sometimes, and actually to laugh a little bit more about what's going on, and try not to take everything so seriously, because we are humans and we do crazy shit.
yep.
But to forgive ourselves, and just to know that we can still continue on, like, not to say, okay, I fucked up and now that's it, I'm done. I don't want to be in this spiritual stuff anymore. It's too hard. It's too this, it's too that. But to laugh at it and say, well, okay, today's another day. And today we'll just try it this way. Or, it's always ongoing. I kind of think that if we ever got to the point where we weren't doing it anymore and we were like, okay, everything's good, that we'd probably literally disappear into thin air, because nothing would be holding us down here anymore.
Well, that's something that always comes up to me, and I've noticed in the past year. For some reason, I started paying attention to near death experiences, Darius Wright, and the
Mm,
controlled out of body experiences. And you listen to their stories, it's the same thing.
yeah.
They That reminded me, you're talking about, if we stopped doing this or we just got to a perfect place, we would just disappear. So it seems like that's where we were.
Yeah.
We had the ability to have whatever we wanted it whenever we wanted. The ability, as we put it on this plane, to manifest immediately.
Right. Yes.
Uh, and the only thing I continuously put out, and I'm sure my mindset and my thoughts on this and my words to describe it will change over time, but it seems like we
Mm.
got bored.
Mm.
And
Sure.
we came here to understand what we're not. We came here for the limitations, because up there, down there, well, not up there, but just different dimensions.
Out there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
out there, we didn't have any limitations, so we wanted to see what limitations were like. And like I've always said, I'd like to talk to my soul and ask him what he was thinking,
Yeah. Right.
because those out of body experiences and where we came from sounds incredible. And
Right.
that's where I kind of, not lost, but shifted my mindset on spirituality, because I thought enlightenment was the end all be all. Well,
Right.
the enlightenment in the physical form doesn't even scratch the surface on where we came from. So
Right. Right.
I assume awakening and enlightenment is just another experience. That's all we came here to do.
Right. We came here to have that duality, that contrast. We came to know ourselves. Without a contrast, we have nothing to, we don't know dark, we can't know light. Yeah. So I think that's what I try to remember as well, is to not fear that kind of pain and darkness, knowing that it's just so essential to us having the human experience. I mean, if we had everything we wanted, would we ever do very much other than just, I just feel like we need that contrast to drive us forward and to experience more in our lives. Our lives would be pretty boring, I think, you know.
Apparently so, because I've not yet met a human being who is any different than what you just said.
Yeah.
As much as I'd like to figure out a way to get to that point, and I assume that's why most of us start the spiritual path, is to figure out an easier way of living, a more peaceful way of living. Um, Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a tough thing to continuously deal with as a human. That's where that acceptance
Yeah.
comes in.
Although, as they say, enjoy the journey as we go, right? Like, try to find that joy in what we do every day as we move towards that place. And, maybe, yeah, like I think bringing more joy in our life is what we were meant to do here as well. We're not so meant to just, okay, I need to go from step A to B to C to D and like get through all of this, but really enjoy going through all of this. I mean, why else would we be on this earth if we weren't? I mean, we've got the most beautiful planet to be on. When you look at your sunsets and your mountains and your animals and your plants, like that was, we have that for joy and for the pleasure of being on the earth, which is, it's interesting. You were talking about near death experiences. So I haven't experienced my own near death, but I've experienced two other people after they've died and gone into their consciousness.
Okay.
And let me tell you, wow. After you've done that, that's another thing of never fearing death, because it feels so, it's like stepping into the most clear. There isn't a lack of anxiety. Anxiety doesn't exist. There's nothing exists other than love. It's just this pure feeling of absolute love. And that's where I started to realize that love doesn't have an opposite. The opposite of love is not fear. Love has no opposite. Love is love. It just is. There isn't anything else opposing it. I mean, down here on earth, we have things that think they're opposing it.
Mm-hmm.
But really, when you experience what it feels like to be on that other plane, you feel so much joy and so much clarity and so much, you realize that, fear doesn't even exist. Like, it's just so clear. And it's such a beautiful thing to experience. And I experienced, like, the first time was before this kind of journey, I guess you would call it. It was years ago. I was at the funeral for a friend's son. And I didn't even know the son, but I stepped behind the mother. And of course, everyone's very sad. This was a young man in his 20s who had died in a boating accident. And it was everyone was, devastated. But when I stepped behind her, it was just like stepping into like this column of love. And I knew it was him behind her. And for me, it was just like, I couldn't believe it. And it just felt so beautiful and so clear and so wonderful. The second time I experienced was not that long ago, was when my mother-in-law passed, and I had spent the day with her knowing that she was going to pass fairly soon. So I'd been lying on the bed beside her a lot, and she was very resistant to ever kind of experiencing her feelings or being open to things. So I just laid there beside her. The next day, she passed in the morning, and later that afternoon, when I was just sitting quietly, she came to me and she's like, now I understand everything. And it was that exact same sense of pure love and joy and peace that she brought in. But she actually brought some words in, which I thought was actually really funny.
Do
But
you,
yeah.
so when you were talking of standing behind the other lady and you could feel that peace, that clarity, that love, do you, is it just a sense for you, a feeling, or do you see things? Do you see auras? Do you see beings? Do you?
I don't. It's funny because sometimes I'm not sure if I'm actually seeing it or I'm just feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't say that I actually see it, but yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. But definitely that was mostly feeling. It
Okay.
was just mostly feeling. And I think when the feeling comes in, then it kind of attains a color. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's usually a very pale blue, and it's
Okay.
very clear and and it's not like I walk around seeing or doing this all the time. It just kind of comes out once in a while and surprises me, to tell you the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's again, we a lot of people like to talk about these feelings and seeing an aura, seeing energy, seeing beings, seeing different dimensions. But it always comes back down to we came here to be in these limitations in this physical form. There's quite a few people that actually feel that, see that. Quite a few people who don't want to talk about it because they think they're going crazy. Um,
Yeah.
I've had a few people on this podcast who see everything,
Oh,
and it sounds incredible, but to them, at points, it's very overwhelming because I'm looking out right now at a soccer stadium, a billboard, cars, you. I mean, we have so much information coming in to our very limited senses. Uh,
right.
and that overwhelms us. That's why this world's so chaotic, because that clarity's coming as consciousness shifts and raises. We're able to see, feel, sense more. We're becoming more sensitive. And that's kind of overwhelming. If I were
Yeah.
to, if his name's David Buckland, amazing human, if I looked out and saw what he said he sees, I don't know if I could handle it.
Yeah.
I mean, but apparently his nervous system is purified enough. He's become used to it. He can go in and out. I mean, he has an
Right.
experience where he saw through a wall down into a basement, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's amazing." Well, what good is that in a sense, right? So he has always come back to being human. His book is
Right.
our natural abilities or our natural way. He big
Do
time
with
meditator.
that.
Yeah, he's amazing. David
Yeah.
Bartlett, Davidja.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
my fiance is very sensitive. She feels like
mm,
when she walks into a room, there could be 10 people in the room with gigantic smiles on their face, and on the outside you'd be like, oh, this is a room full of great people, and she's like, we got to go.
yeah. Yeah.
Or she'll hold it in, and later that night she'll just be
Oh,
dead tired and drained.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know that's happening more to more people than we could ever imagine, but they just don't know why. They just don't know why, because they
Right.
haven't experienced, they haven't read what you've read. They don't know about the constructs or the concepts you're creating, you're talking about right now. And hopefully more
Hmm.
and more people can hear this, because there's a significant amount of people who will cross my path and say, you're going to think I'm crazy, and I'm like,
Yeah. I know. Like, I don't think I've ever spoken in such a public way about everything I just said to you.
that's
Like, I
good.
even question, like, do I even mention that? Like, it's weird, but I know that, yeah.
No, and that's part of this podcast, and that is, I don't see things. I know I'm more
Mm.
sensitive than I give myself credit to because I can feel it,
Oh,
but
yeah.
psychedelics haven't messed with me. Ungodly amounts of meditation have never let me see things. I've never had an out of body experience. I've never saw
Right.
colors. I've never seen beings. Um, but apparently, the one thing I've been given is the ability to talk to anyone and make the magical feel normal, or make a someone who is just hell bent on being skeptical at least trying an Akashic record call, or doing an energy healing, or trying something different. Having a guy I play soccer with, his wife has, I think, stage 3 or stage 4 cancer, and she's just hell bent on not doing any type of spiritual work, any type of energy healings, any type of, because I've crossed paths with healers who have done amazing things, and they're finally going to try it. I know they're going to at least give it a shot. So
Good.
I love having these discussions. I love, for some reason, this continuous ability for you and other guests to say, I've never spoken about this publicly, but I love that this platform is an open space for you to share that. And the more people share, it, it's going to help more people understand that what they've experienced, what they've saw, what they've seen is not as crazy as they think. That's more normal than this normal society that we think is just such a physical realm.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% agree with everything you just said. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why, yeah, it's interesting because I was just interviewed a few days ago. And I mean, I've never done interviews or anything before. Now it's all of a sudden a lot coming up. And and then I don't know, do you know about gene keys? You
Yep.
ever,
Mhm.
or human design? So I was
Yep.
just reading my human design chart and it was like, because I've been feeling a bit like I was very vulnerable in the last podcast too, about my surgery and my feelings and all of that kind of stuff. Um, And I've been feeling like knowing that it's coming out in this area and lots of people are going to see it. So I've been kind of like, ooh, a bit like insecure. And I'm normally not. I'm normally pretty, chill about stuff. And then I read in my gene key is something like, your job is to provide information and leadership to others and put your own insecurities aside. I was like, oh God. You have
That's
to sacrifice your own insecurity is what it said. I was like,
that
yeah.
is that is that is part of the process for a significant amount of people, such as you and I, my fiance, many people I know. We know how we can help. We know how we can provide information, but we've got that fear and insecurity that people will think we're crazy, or maybe we don't know. We look at
Right.
people. Me personally, I will look at someone who's really, really confident, and I don't see confidence. I see them trying to cover something up.
Right. Right.
So I think part of this process is finding that strength to share, like you're doing, because more
Mhm.
and more people. Again, I can't tell you how many people have said, "You're going to think I'm crazy. I went hunting and a voice told me don't go into that forest." Or I swear I saw my grandma, she passed 5 years ago, or the gene keys, or a book, or
Oh yeah.
we a couple buddies and I are working on a project, and we looked up Google searches, and they saw 7 million searches for spiritual terms each month, and they were just blown away, like how many searches. And I'm thinking, out of the billions of people who have internet access and the trillions of searches that happen every month, because we're always on 7 million's nothing. And it continuously reminds me the minority that we are talking about this. It's
Yeah.
we're always talking. You have a facility that we'll talk about shortly, and you're
Mhm.
engulfed in it. I'm doing the podcast, the book. I'm thinking, you're thinking, other guests are thinking exactly only about that. So we think the world's thinking about it.
Right. Right. We
No,
do.
no. There's a very, very small group of individuals thinking about this stuff, comfortable enough to share what you're sharing. So that's great. Please keep
Right.
sharing.
Right.
Please keep
No,
sharing.
thank you for sharing too. Yeah.
So tell me, I recognize, is that thing around your neck part of the EE system? Isn't that the
It
Wi-Fi thing?
is.
Tell people about that, because I've had a few times in my life where I've worn those. I've had a silver one. I've had one that was kind of like yours through the EE system, and Jason shared
Pyrite.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please
The
talk.
bracelet.
Please talk about that.
Okay, this is something that comes out of where they manufacture the systems in Nevada, and they have actually an hypercharger that they hypercharge like medallions made of different, like this one's pyrite. They got amethyst, rose quartz, all different minerals and crystals. They also do the bracelets. So there's rainbow fluorite, and this is called peacock druzy agate. So they hypercharge an permanent energy field into the jewelry, and when you wear it, it conducts that energy into the body. So there's a whole list of benefits of what it does. So you're almost like carrying around a mini version, quite a mini version compared to the system itself. But you are carrying that charge that the system has.
And it's basically a invisible force field around your body that helps with what they're finally. I mean, they knew this was going to happen. They just buried it. But the Wi-Fi,
Mhm.
the energy, the stuff that's like,
Yeah.
that's the
The
how we become right.
electromagnetic fields that can affect our bodies. And as they say it's not that they're bad fields, they're just not good for our bodies.
For us. Yes.
So it helps to transmute the energy. It doesn't block it, but it transmutes it into an energy that is safer for our bodies to have. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And
And the system itself creates um, a field of diameter of 4 miles around that creates that same protective from the field from the electromagnetic fields that can be negative for our bodies.
so let's get into that system. I heard about, and
Oh,
when we go back, will you please talk about the doctor behind it? Um, I There's a facility here in Salt Lake.
Oh, yeah.
I heard about it through, I think his name's Jason Shirka,
Yep.
the guy that was tapped by TLS, the light system, to
Yep.
start talking about more about the stuff. And he and that doctor expanded from, like, I think they had 40 and now they've got 300 across the world and growing. So I heard about that, and I actually went to one, I think last year, and sat in a lazy boy, and there was a bunch of people who were covered up in blankets, older gentlemen, older ladies who had different types of illness. Some were there just to cleanse their energy, but it had, and you'll describe this a lot better, but there were a bunch of computer screens that had, it looked like the TV was out of channel and it was just going down and down and down.
Yeah.
And I think there were 24 or 36 surrounding a circle,
Mm,
and it was a dark room, and you just go in for an hour and you just kind of sit there and hang out, and you'd leave. And
yeah.
the EE systems, please let the world know what those are and how they work, what they do, where they can be a part of
Right.
it.
So I first learned about the E systems. It was in 2021. I had opened a bed and breakfast here, and I began to have more people coming and saying to me, we'd love a place to do like retreats and more like a healing kind of place. And one of them sent me the interview of Jason Shirka with his very first interview with Dr. Sandra Rose Michael, who is
Mm-hmm.
the inventor of the energy enhancement system. And she had invented this system about 25 years ago. It's been used in the military, and it's been mostly in the hands of private, wealthy individuals. So Jason Shirka comes along, does a 2-hour interview with her. The reason he did it was partly because of TLS, but also because his aunt and his sister's dog had experienced some amazing disappearances of tumors.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought, well, I need to go see, because he was super skeptical, as we all should be. A healthy
Mm-hmm.
skepticism is, we all need that, myself included, for sure. And that 2-hour interview, which totally captivated me, and I was like, this is, I think, what I need to do. They received 70,000 emails from around the world when that interview came out on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube.
Yep.
So they really realized, okay, this is something that's really gonna take off. So I researched it for about a year. I just listened to him mostly. I watched testimonials. Whatever I could find to listen to and to watch, because I really wanted to make sure what I was seeing was as authentic as it sounded, and it really was. So I thought to myself, well, I think I want to apply for a center. And I was still at the bed and breakfast at the time, and I thought, I want to create a healing center in the bed and breakfast. But as it turned out, my business partner at the time was not in alignment with that at all. I ended up leaving that business. And that's, the moment you have when you're like, oh my God, nothing is like I thought it was going to be. I'm not supposed to do this after all. You have those moments where you just think all, your best laid plans have just been boom. But as usually, there's always a good reason for why what happens to us. And so I took the path of just letting that go, not holding on to it, not trying to bring it with me, I just let it go. Then I get an email from EE Systems, and they really wanted to help people open centers in Mexico, Central and South America. And I thought, I am meant to do this. I am going to do this. So I thought, I'm going to apply. So I applied in July 2023. And the system, it's about a year till it comes. So I thought, by the time it comes, I'm going to have the place. I'm going to be all ready. So that's exactly what happened. So I opened my center in June of this past summer, June 2024. So the EE system, it's just, as you can see by I'm smiling, it's just like been such an incredible experience. So what you're seeing, so my system is actually not in this room, but it's mounted around the room above. So a lot of centers have them on towers on the floor, but mine is actually surrounding the room. You'll see the black boxes, which are called engine field generators, and they are generating a toroidal field of electromagnetic energy. So they're all perfectly aligned. And as the energy comes to the center of the room, it's perfectly aligned and creates a toroidal field of energy. That's the quantum field that it creates. And when we go within that energy, the cells of our body begin to sync with that energy. And they're syncing with a healthy, universal energy. So we've got that quantum side of it. Our bodies are syncing with it. That's the field that also goes outside the center. Then you got those monitors above. And like you said, the colors are going up and down. They're going fast and slow. But again, they are all perfectly synced. They've got a biophotonic energy. So it's the energy of their color. And they are perfectly synced. So as those biophonetic fields come together, they are creating an electrical charge in the room. So they are looking at the physical. One is on the quantum side, the other is on the more physical side. So that physical side is literally charging the cells of our body. So when we are in sickness and disease, our cells have a very lower voltage within the body. As the system helps to bring up the charge between 70 and 90 millivolts is a healthy charge for our cells. And then our body can heal itself. So the system is not healing us, it's creating the perfect energetic environment to heal ourselves. So that in a nutshell is what's happening. And what I have seen within myself and what I've seen with my clients, because there's an energy beyond just what the system is, for sure. Because I had people coming at me from all different places who were bringing me word of mouth clients from, like, it's almost hard to explain. Like, I'm like, where did they even come from? Like, they just appeared in my life and are so supportive of the center. And the center from day one has been so successful.
So what are people doing, just so people can understand? Is it like I was talking about? You're just sitting down for an hour? Is it half an hour, 2 hours? What's best?
Okay. So the minimum recommended amount of time is 2 hours.
Okay.
So at my center and most centers, you're coming in, you're in a recliner. I've got zero gravity recliners in there. I've got different frequencies of music playing to help you relax. It's fairly dark in my center. We all go in at the same time and come out at the same time. So I have 3 sessions a day. So there isn't people coming and going. We want the most relaxation possible. Okay. You go in, you're in your chair. And I just tell people the best thing you could do is to fall asleep, because your body's going to be the less resistance and you're just going to heal more deeply when you're asleep. You can meditate, you can, but, phones need to stay out of the room unless you've got like a beautiful meditative something that you want to listen to. But yeah, you're basically in there for 2 hours. And then, people come out, and normally what's recommended after that is to have a salt detox bath. So it's got a combination of sea salt, baking soda, boron, and then energy enhanced salt that comes from that technology that enhances this. They have a salt that you add to it. Well, here in Mexico, hardly anyone has a bathtub. And if you have a bathtub, you probably won't have enough hot water to have a bath. So what we actually provide, we do these foot baths. So as people come out and sit in my reception area, they put their feet into this hot foot bath with that salt mixture, and there's lavender and that kind of thing. So they sit there for about 20 minutes, and it gives me a nice time where I can actually talk to the people, and, they'll tell me how they're feeling or what they've experienced, or that kind of thing. So that's how ours work. And then we have packages, because really, I think 2 hours, I would say a large majority of people actually feel some small changes. Like they'll feel pain maybe in certain places of old injuries. And that's what the system does, is it brings up old to push it out. It's just like going through emotional detox. We have to bring up the pain to move through the pain. Well, our body's doing that too. It brings up the pain so we can move through it and push it away. People will sleep better that night. Sometimes certain pains, if they're fairly recent pains, they'll often disappear in 2 hours. But I have people come bigger packages that come every single day and have seen big shifts in conditions that have not changed in 10 to 15 years.
Well,
So yeah,
when
and we're starting to see that now because we've been open long enough.
so most people, that's what they're going to want to hear about. So
Yeah.
I assume some people are coming in that are healthy, just want to kind of detox. But when it comes
Yeah.
to the vast majority that see massive shifts, can you talk about some of the greatest, the most miraculous things you've seen? What type of injuries, what type of diseases, what's been healed?
So one of the most interesting cases that's been recently is we've had a gentleman come in, and I've actually done a write-up in my newsletter that's coming out in November and has pictures of him. One of his legs is literally like from the knee to the toes, is like someone stuck an air pump in and just inflated his skin and inflated his foot. It's massively, like it's 3 times the size of his other leg. And he was saying, it's been 15 years, and he goes to doctors in Canada, doctors in Mexico. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows what to do. One doctor recommended, maybe they could dissolve the veins in the leg and things like that. And he has done about 30 hours now. And for the first time ever, he noticed the changes starting almost immediately in the leg. And then I'll tell you all the other changes he's felt. And he was a total skeptic at first, like, yeah, I don't. And now the leg, it used to be you couldn't even like press on it. It was just hard.
Mm.
So now there's like, you can like press into the tissue, and you can actually see his ankle bones, which you couldn't before.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually see creases like where the foot and the leg meet in like there are creases now, where before it was just like literally like a balloon from one end to the other. So and he can slip on a shoe more easily. Like, as you can imagine, it'd be so difficult to find shoes that you could even wear.
Mm-hmm.
So he was wearing kind of like a big running shoe with no laces on the one foot, and still having to really tug it to get it on. And now the foot just kind of slips right in. So to see that, and just to see the joy and relief on his face. But it wasn't just that. He had a spot on his face that he hadn't even been thinking about. It's been like years, again, itchy and flaking, and just kind of one of those irritating things that the doctors are like, I don't know what it is. Gone, completely gone, he noticed. But the one thing, and to me, almost more importantly than almost anything else, is his state of mind. And that's what I noticed the most too, is it brings you into a brain coherence that is absolutely, it changes your entire life, because like most of us are like this, and some of us are like more like this, and some of us are like this. This tends to make you kind of just like this. Like your anxiety. He says he wakes up in the morning and he says, I feel stoked for my day. I feel excited. I feel energetic. Goes, I never felt that way before. I'd wake up in the morning and think, oh, another day. And, how am I going to get through this day? And that kind of a feeling. And now he says every morning he wakes up excited. And really, when our mind can change to that, our bodies are absolutely going to respond to our mind
Mm-hmm.
changing.
Mm-hmm.
So it just helps the system even work better for your body because your mind is like now on board. And he's just like, to see him talk about it and just he has a smile of satisfaction on his face is just incredible. So that is our biggest story right now, which I think is incredible. We have there's an alternative cancer care clinic here in the city, and their clients come. So they come to the clinic, and they're usually from the States and Canada. They stay for a week or two, but they come here every day. And I was talking to the owners last night, and they said, every single one of our clients loves coming here to the system every day. And all of them are looking for systems near to where they live in Canada and the US. So, and here we can only charge half of what they charge in Canada and the US. So it's very affordable to come to Mexico and do it. I think we were the second one to open, and there's about 3 open and a couple more coming here to Mexico.
Do they treat it kind of like a franchise? Do they have control over it in a sense, or do they just say it's set up, it's yours?
You know what? That's the really beautiful thing about this is they are absolutely authentic in wanting to, like you said earlier, they're almost actually at 500 centers around the world
Okay.
in just 3 years. And as Jason Shirka likes to say, Starbucks took 15 years to get to 500 locations.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're almost at 500. So no, you own the system outright. You purchase the entire thing. You have an optional choice to purchase they will advertise and look after all that kind of other stuff for you, provide you with tons of print collateral that you can use in your own advertising. They provide absolutely amazing support. So you do buy that contract, but they add things onto your contract that they're not asking for more money. They just say, oh, now you can have this, and now you can have this. The only thing they ask is that you not charge more than a certain amount. So they cap the pricing.
Okay.
So the US, Canada, Australia, they're capped at 60 an hour US, and we're capped at 30 an hour US.
Okay.
So other than that, we are free to create. We don't pay franchise fees or anything. We're completely free to create our own center. So every single center is very different.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's beautiful. Yeah. The one I went to, there were people coming in and out, so they weren't set. It was just going all day, and everyone was very,
Yeah.
very, very respectful. It was very quiet.
Yeah.
It worked out pretty well. Something I like to ask people who have facilities, people who are healers,
Hmm.
just to get their feedback, because there's, as you say, a skeptical. A lot of people will hear this and say they can see it for their own eyes, and they can hear these stories, and they can still think it's bullshit.
Sure. Oh, sure. And
And
that's
they're,
actually not a bad thing.
yeah, no, and they'll always, even if they do see it, or even something happens to them, they'll still fall back on, well, it doesn't work for everybody. And this is where I love to ask this question, just to get your understanding of it, because it's always different.
Right.
For every one of those stories, like the guy with the leg who saw an incredible shift, what is it in this universe? Is it karma? Is it just not their timing? Is it their diet? Is there something going on in the individuals who come through with a cancer or something like that guy, who aren't healed, who will do 30 hours and not see something? And that's kind of a unpopular question, but there's a lot of people that like to hear honesty when it comes to that. I know you would too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are absolutely people come here, and you can see their skepticism, and some people are still open. I'm going to be skeptical, but I'm also going to be open and allowing. Some people you can tell are skeptical, but they've already made their minds up that they're not going to be open and allowing. Some of those people are surprised and they feel benefits and they go, wow, I really did feel something. Other people simply, they don't. And then they don't come back. There aren't actually that many, surprisingly, that don't ever come back. I've only had, gosh, maybe 3 or 4 people who've never come back. But when you really close your mind down and you've decided, like I can see that, like the wall that's built on that energetic wall, and they're within it and they're just like this. But the ones who are skeptical but are still open, they don't have that same kind of wall, so it still penetrates, and they come out. But yeah, and people, as we say, it's not just, you don't just go in the system and then go have 10 margaritas and eat a bunch of junk food. Like, you really need to drink more water and make healthier choices. We all love to indulge in certain things. Like, I live in Mexico, I love to drink mezcal. But I don't drink mezcal every day. And, the majority of my life is about making healthy choices. And we all need to support. And actually, in that story about with the leg, it had inspired him to make some changes in what he was eating and how he was already a meditator, which I was very surprised, actually. That old judge a book by its cover, to me, he didn't seem like he was a meditator and that kind of thing. And it turns out he is, but still very skeptical. But I think perhaps delving into the fact that he was already a meditator opened him up more to receive what he received. Yeah. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, that's
Okay.
the the question always has different responses, and it's always
Mm,
based off of the healer, their own constructs, their own beliefs, their own knowledge, readings, what they were taught.
right.
But it all boils down to the same stuff, whether we're talking about a religion or spirituality or why someone heals or does not heal. Yeah, usually not being open to it. There is skepticism, but still being open. But some people, kind of like incredibly religious people,
Mm,
they're not going to be open to meditation. They're not going to be open to energy healings, and forget religious people. Kind of like the doctors I know, they would
oh
never.
yeah.
The doctors I talk to, when they say someone in their life has something that can't be healed, they would listen to this and say it wouldn't even cross their mind. First of all, they probably wouldn't ever hear it because they wouldn't even be thinking about alternative healings, and if they did, they would just think it was absolute bullshit, and they wouldn't even try it,
Right.
even if it was their last ditch effort. Which
Yeah, and that is fascinating, isn't it?
Mhm.
Because there are, being in a retirement community in Mexico, you just see that how this could help so many people, and yet it's like they don't see it as you're trying to like. And I don't ever press it on anybody. I never say, "Oh, you should try this." I just simply share my story. If they ask, I share my story. And then a lot of times that draws people into it, because I'm not interested in bringing in people who don't resonate with it to begin with. If you resonate with it, you'll just naturally come. I always say the right angel will speak in your ear and you'll come. Um, but yeah, I still am amazed when you're saying, it doesn't hurt to try this. And yet they're still like, nope, nope, nope. And you're like, wow. But then that is indicative of everything in their lives, right? They're not open to healing in any aspect, like emotionally or physically or really anything at all. They're not open to any kind of healing when they're like that usually. And really, maybe it's not everyone's path to find healing in that way. Maybe it's not. Like, we tend to think like everybody, oh, well, wouldn't everyone want to be on that same path to healing? And then I heard someone recently say, well, maybe that's not something in some people's consciousness, and it's not meant to be for everyone, which is kind of an interesting, like, like it's one of those hmms.
Well, it's a level of consciousness. It's something that I talk about a lot in my book. And when I saw Dr. Hawkins and Ramaji's
Mm,
information about levels, it's kind of like I'm
right,
looking through this window. If that window was caked with Crisco, I would have to guess what was on the other side, and my guessing would be off of belief, and I wouldn't have the faintest clue what was on there.
right.
And that we don't get mad at an 8-year-old for being in second grade, and a 16-year-old being in 10th grade is not better than the second grader. Just
Right.
different levels, different ages. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
That window for the people who are open to this is just more clear, and they're seeing alternatives. They're seeing that what they believed was on the other side is not really the case. So they've expanded their mind. What can I work with? What can I fear? What can I do? How can I help? Oh, there's alternative methods. And we've always, with our linear brains, our linear time, our minds, we think as we age, we become smarter and wiser, which in a sense is okay, is true. But I can't believe we don't talk about this more. And that's why I always talk about it. That clarity does not shift with age.
Right. No,
And that is
absolutely
shown
not.
with how divisive Republicans and Democrats can be. That is
Right.
shown in how divisive Catholics and atheists can be. And that is shown in, like you said, when people say, I can't believe more people don't want to heal like this. It's just not in their awareness. It's not that they don't want it.
Right.
There are the people who are, that window's becoming more clear, and they'll hear about this and say, no, fine. No different
Yeah.
than a Catholic or a Mormon saying, I'm starting to question the church, but I don't want to upend my life, my family, and be pushed out of my community. Perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And then there's the vast majority, a majority that they're not even questioning it. They're perfectly fine with their beliefs, their
Mhm.
ideas. They don't know about the EE systems. They don't know about meditation.
Right.
And just like I say in the book, and I really like to hammer this home, I'm not picking a side,
No.
because I have done everything on this spiritual path, and it was a mere distraction for me.
Mm-hmm.
In the moment of meditating, having my teacher, doing Shaktipat, doing energy healings, doing whatever, hypnosis, whatever, I absolutely thought in that moment I needed it. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. All I'm saying is I'm not choosing a side of Republican or Democrat. I'm not saying that the lack of
No.
clarity is a problem. I'm not saying a 16-year-old's better than an 8-year-old. I'm not choosing a side. I'm just hopefully bringing out an understanding as to why a lot of very intelligent adults are not open to Buddhism, to meditation, and that Buddhism and meditation, after going through everything I've gone through, it's not better. It's just different. And
Different.
we in the West think that the East has something we don't know. And the only reason we think that is because we don't know it. So we think it's different.
Right.
So
Right.
a lot of Catholics will go Buddhist. Fine. That's great.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that's just a level of consciousness, a level of clarity. And when you read about Dr. Hawkins and Ramaji, you see that the vast majority on this planet are quite low in consciousness.
Right.
And that doesn't mean success or intelligence. That just means they have a certain belief and they're going to stick to it in this lifetime. And that's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yes.
But
Yes.
I really wish more people, I wish the levels of consciousness understanding was talked about by more people. Because I
Yeah.
think it would solve a lot of people's questions on why wouldn't people want to be kind? Why wouldn't more people want to work with Sheri? Why wouldn't more people meditate? Why wouldn't
Right.
a doctor who was stage 4 cancer at least give this a try just to see? They're really
Yeah.
that hell
Yeah.
bent on saying, absolutely, I'm never going to try this.
Right.
What do you have to lose?
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely the old me would have been taking it quite personally, like, what do you mean you don't believe in what I do and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But the new me is just like, that's okay. It's not resonating with who you are at this moment. And that's fine. Like, the people will come as they will come, and you know, um, and I think because I let go of that, like needing like people to support what I was doing, that's when it naturally happens that the right people come in and they do support what you're doing, because you're not needing it and you're not holding it and you're not, you're just allowing whatever needs to come in, and not judging. Like you say, you're not judging like, oh, what's wrong with you? You don't know what I'm doing is good for you. No, it's not about that at all. Yeah.
The guy I interviewed a couple days before you talked about the word need. He was having some issues with his wife, and he just at one point finally said, "I don't like the disrespect. I don't need you." And he didn't say that in the way most people would take that. He just said it in a very liberating way. And he
Right.
said, since he said that and legitimately felt it, not just said it, their relationship is altered in a very good way. So that need, like you said, that need for it to be a certain specific way, you've got this infinite universe who's trying to just funnel everything to us.
Right.
Those expectations, which I am horrible at creating, you've taken
Yeah.
this infinite universe and just limited it to how it's going to come, when it's going to come, where it's going to come, and it's just the folly of being human. And I'm a
Oh
big fool when
yeah.
it comes to that.
When I look back at my journey from Toronto to here and what's gone on in the time, um, yeah, like I would have these like limited views of what I wanted and how I saw it come. This is how it's going to come, and this is what it's going to be. And when you finally surrender to not, like, you put it out there that this is what I want, or what I would like to manifest in my life, but by not holding on to it and allowing the universe to create and give to you, it gives you way better than what you think you want. Like, you're just like, this center is in a beautiful historic, my house is about 150 years old. It's in a beautiful neighborhood. It's like the universe gave me more than I could ever have imagined that I even wanted. So, and that's from letting go. It's from not going, okay, it can be only this way. This is the way it needs to be. And, that was how I used to be. I mean, most of us are probably that way. Meaning,
I think all of us are that way. And
yeah. And I
as
mean, you think you kind of got past it, and then of course you do it again. So yeah,
yeah, the your family, ex-husband, your kids, the shift from who you were to who you are now, has there been acceptance, resistance? What do they think?
so I mean, in the words of my ex, I don't even like the word ex. It just is, nobody's an ex. Jeff. So in his words, I think he knew me for so well and so long that he says, I can't I can't imagine you being any different than exactly the way you are. He said, I'm not surprised by all of this. He said, I always, um, perhaps saw that this might be what you did. My boys, are so open and accepting. They're amazing. They're very open and accepting of me as well. Um, the rest of the family, I mean, they didn't say much, but you could tell that they're very like, oh, this isn't where you should be, what you should be doing. And,
Yeah,
our thoughts of you are in Toronto and still married and this and this. And like, what are you doing? Just destroying all of what we expected of you. How dare you? But not in like, they're not like being nasty or mean, but I know that that's how they're like, oh, like, what is she doing? So I've been lucky on this journey that I haven't had people in my life who have said, oh, really taken me down or tried to really be mean or say mean things. Or I've been very fortunate in that everyone's been pretty accepting.
that's good. That's
Mm.
I'm hearing that more and more. Um, there's been acceptance, but there's be some family members or friends that will not really push back. They'll just, you can feel like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
That's
Or almost like, how dare you do those
uh-huh.
things that no one else should be doing? You should be just staying in this box.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Is there other modalities going on in your facility that you like to help people with, teach, that people will come to you for?
Yeah, so what I'm finding that is, and what I'd hope for this to be, is a collaboration of a lot of people in the neighborhood bringing their gifts to a place where they can share them more.
Mm-hmm.
So Mazatlan isn't known really as a spiritual place. Like people think of Tulum or Sayulita or different places throughout Mexico. And people would say to me, well, why are you doing that there? There isn't a spiritual community. And I said, well, that's why I'm doing it here, because there isn't as much of a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
community. There is amongst Mexicans for sure, but not so much amongst the foreign population. So we are the first thing I'm bringing in is massage therapists. And I really like to work with the local people, not bring in a lot of foreigners into the center, because I'm in Mexico. So I do my best to speak Spanish and to learn more Spanish and to work with, and oddly enough, and I tell you again, it's the energy of the system. Most of my clientele are Mexican. They're not, and it's highly unusual for a foreigner to open a business and get mostly Mexican clientele. They
Mm-hmm.
normally get mostly Americans and Canadians,
Sure.
but that hasn't been the case here. It's been Mexican. So I'm really trying to work with like sound healers, to do sound baths within the room. There's a site of petroglyphs just north of the city where we can go and do retreats. There are people who, Reiki, people who do Reiki, but way more than that, way more working with energies and
Mm-hmm.
more with ceremonial things and things like that. And they're really getting excited because they're feeling like this is maybe a place where they can come together. So we're not doing just stuff within the EE room, but we're doing it within this, like the center itself, bringing in different things. Next week, I'm starting a meditation series where we'll start, we'll do breath work, we'll do body scans, we'll do guided meditation, personal reflection. And so that'll be new for the center. So I love to share the meditation journey, because so many people don't think that they're meditators, or that they have to follow this prescription of what meditation is.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to open it up to people to say, meditation is walking, meditation is listening to music. Meditation is 5 minutes if you only have 5 minutes. So yeah, I like to think I'm opening more minds that might not have been opened in the past, leading them gently. If they come here for massage and they see the EE room and they talk to people who are sitting out there waiting for their sessions, it helps to expand their minds. Because, of course, for me speaking, as a center owner, people are going to perceive that there will be a bias. But when they hear it from other clients, that brings them to a whole different understanding and accepting sometimes.
Yes, and it is a business.
Mm-hmm.
And there's too many people on the spiritual path who leave business and capitalism and the corporate world behind and go the polar opposite and really struggle. And
Yeah.
there needs to be a bridge there. There needs to be an understanding. There needs to be a balance, because the system we've built is not going to go drastically the other way.
No.
We are still going to have money or some type of exchange. We're still going to need each other. We're still going to have the relationships. There's going to be new businesses, different businesses. And there's just too many people on this path that really struggle because they feel like the money part of corporate America is what was wrong. No, it wasn't. It was just a greed or a sense of a lower level of consciousness, or the
Right.
system. the system they built off of being super competitive. So there's
Yeah.
got to be happy balance, and I hope more and more people start creating facilities like yours that look to grow a business, look to take what they've learned in the corporate world to market, to sell, to bring more people, to cross promote, to bring massage in, and it just so happens, oh, by the way, there's this, and then there's this, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, and I went through that for a few years as well, where I thought when I left the corporate world and the money behind, that was the problem. That was not the problem. That is not the problem.
Right.
That is not
No,
the problem. So,
no.
well, that's we've been going for about an hour and 20.
Wow.
Yeah, it's I love this format. I love how quickly it goes by. I love people sharing stuff they haven't shared. I always like to end things. Well, the last question, is there anything else you'd like to share or talk about?
Oh, I think we covered a lot more than I even realized that we go through, which was awesome. So thank you.
Yeah, I love this format. The last question for everyone is, what is truth to you?
What is truth? To me, truth is that feeling that you get. Truth is a sense of freedom. Truth is a sense of a deep knowing. Truth is a sense of love, a sense of, yeah, it's almost hard to put in words. I find myself that I feel things more than I'm able to actually put into words. So those are the words that I could come closest to what feels like the truth. Truth is when you feel like you're living authentically to who you truly are, without allowing comparison to others, without allowing comparison even within yourself. It's just that absolute connection to your inner essence. That's truth to me.
Beautiful. I love the answers for that. And the one thing I would add to that is people always talk about love being the highest frequency. And I don't remember who it was, but they've done some studies on authenticity is the
I think
highest.
that too.
So when you speak of being authentic, I think me not being 100% authentic myself has always been the root issue of my depression, the root issue of my conflict inside. Because when I really let loose in a conversation or in a day, or I'm doing something, like when I'm really being authentic, and that ego doesn't kick in an hour later and say, you shouldn't have said that. I know that's the highest level of frequency. I just feel like there's nothing that can hurt me. There's nothing that can get in my way. Everything's going to be perfect. But the system we built and the ego is so strong.
Oh, yeah.
So that is something I really am working on a day-to-day basis. I love that you use the word being your authentic self. And that authentic self does not mean being kind or it's being who you are. Like if you're supposed to be an asshole, you're going to be an asshole. If you are meant to grow a business, you're going to grow a business. If you're authenticity, it's not about the love and the fake facade and the mood making. It's what your soul came here to do. And there are an infinite things that each soul came here to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not about the jewelry we wear, the clothes we wear. It's the, really feeling that this authenticity in our soul. And it's so freeing when you finally, not that I'm there, but I get closer, I get closer, I get closer. And it feels so freeing to feel like, yeah, if you don't like me, that's okay, because I'm exactly who I am. And if I change to make you like me, then I wouldn't be authentic, and then I would be unhappy. So when you're authentic, you can always feel a sense of happiness and freedom and calmness.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Something that's definitely a work process, a work in progress for me.
Yeah, we all, yeah. I know, me too.
I would love that. To me is like the key to unlocking that is me really being more authentic. So, Sheri, thank you.
Thank you.
I am